Good morning. I welcome you all to our new panel discussion with our 5 VRED experts. My name is Pilgram. I am the Managing Director of Product Innovation Lounge and will be the host for this event. We prepared a few topics for today, but the goal is to try to have a very vivid and open discussion. So let's start now. So I will introduce our experts. So I welcome first Braun. Christian, great to have you here in the panel. Christian, you have a long time experience in 3D visualization for several manufacturers like Porsche, Volvo, or Polestar. 2 years ago, you started matching your first own company, but just last week I learned you are now in the board of Zerone and Meile and Müller as well. Can you tell us more how that came and how you handle these 3 jobs at the same time?
Yes, for sure. And thank you very much for the invitation, Christian. I would say it was always my dream to have my own company, and it was a long time in my head. But I joined these fantastic companies like Porsche, Polestar, and Volvo, and it was nice, very nice to be there. And I did a lot of experience over the years. But to make my own company was now my decision to do a real step for me and myself, and to bring a dream really true. And I had the chance when we came back from Sweden to Germany. I said, okay, now I found my own company. And this is such a big change for me, because before I was always with these companies, structured, you have your meetings, you have your people working with you. And now suddenly you start doing your stuff by yourself, but you have the chance to give all your experience to much more companies on the world, not just automotive. I'm also very much interested in fashion industry, or normal products are really interesting to me, so I was always very wide open to technology and industries. And I think it's quite good if you have nearly 30 years of experience and to take something out of your experience and give it to some more people as just the automotive area. This was my driver.
That sounds good. I think we come to that point later, because I think that's really interesting. So next I want to introduce Martin Emila. Martin, a warm welcome for you. When I had a look at your CV yesterday, I was very surprised that it's already 8 years you are at BSH. Bosch Siemens Hausgeräte, so it must be 13 years we know each other, because before that you have 5 years at Autodesk, and we know I think since the very first beginning you started at Autodesk. Can you tell us about your way into CGI, and what are you doing in your current position?
So thank you. Yeah, Christian, I'm really happy to be here today. So thanks a lot for an invitation. Story about the CGI. I tried to compress this into a few sentences. It started very soon in the 90s, where I worked as a mechanical engineer and interested more and more about present the product in an attractive and visual way. So after a few stations in my career path, I landed on Autodesk in 2008, if I'm right. Then we met together, and was responsible for visualization tools like a Showcase or 3D Studio Max, with focus on a manufacturing, consumer, and automotive. And after 5 years, I changed to BSH, Bosch Siemens Hausgeräte, where I'm responsible currently for a small team of specialists. We cover different areas, from virtual reality, CGI, up to the data preparation process, and support all BSH brands. It's about the 5 big brand names behind the BSH, and all design departments for all categories. So it's quite colorful business, and I'm really happy to be here today just to exchange with another expert and learn something about another experiences. So really looking forward.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next one I want to introduce is Christopher Gebhardt. Christopher, I think you, in some way, you are the most important person here because you are the only one in this group who is doing software and script development. Do you also work on renderings, or did you do it before you decided to focus on coding? What was your way with VRED and other software until now?
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for inviting me. I would not consider myself to be the most important person here, but thanks for the introduction. But I guess I'm the only person who comes directly from software development. And I do not really often work on visualizations or renderings. But with my colleague, Christian Wölfel, I really often work on real-time visualizations. And I see myself as the extension to the designer job. So he does the design work, and then I take over and improve the product with the software development. And well, I did some design jobs before studying, so I toyed with web design, with some print design, and so on. But yeah, I started studying software development, and I really liked it. Yeah, and I studied human-computer interaction in Munich. And human-computer interaction is just some fancy way of saying that we do software development with the goal that the end user should really understand the product. And then I started working in Munich with some technical visualizations. So I did some head-up display visualizations in virtual reality. And I did it mostly with Unity and Unreal Engine. But then I started working with Christian Wölfel, and we started to have some ideas for improving scripting workflows in VRED. And yeah, now we work with different programs. So we use VRED, we use Cinema, we use Rhino, WebGL. So we use whatever gets the job done. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you, Christopher. Antonis, you have eight-year experience in car design at Mercedes. Now I'm happy that you are working for a product innovation lounge again, which already I think was the first job after university before you went to Mercedes. When did you first get in contact with VRED, and what was the history before that?
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for letting me join too. I think you said it right. Like, let's get back to that point. During my studies, I got to know Autodesk and also you, and I don't know. I mean, I studied car interior design in Reutlingen, which was very specific, but I was even more into 3D quite from the beginning. And so I always liked working with those tools, and of course, like the Autodesk automotive tools. And yeah, coming from there, I somehow stumbled into the advanced design at Mercedes. They needed exactly somebody like me, and I really liked working there, like the very close development of show car exteriors actually. And like coming from the studies and also going into the job at Mercedes, I was using Showcase, and then there came the switch to VRED, and I felt old because in the beginning I was skeptical if it's not much more difficult than Showcase used to be. But then I started getting more and more into it, and it's just like until today, it's the fastest way for me to show the best side of the products I visualize, because it's always a competition in car design, and this is one of the tools helping me to sell it and to win projects.
Thank you, Antonis. So now we come to Danny Tierney from Autodesk. Danny, as far as I know, you're at the moment the most experienced VRED specialist at Autodesk. Thank you a lot for being here. And as I remember, you started at Autodesk when Martin Emila left Autodesk, is that right? But as far as I also remember, you started, VRED was brand new at Autodesk. It was just acquired by Autodesk. Did you know VRED before that? And what Autodesk software you have been in touch beside VRED at that time?
Well, yeah, thanks, Christian, for the invitation, and thanks everybody for joining. Yeah, so myself and Martin kind of crossed paths at the end of his Autodesk career, where I stepped into his boots, which were pretty big boots to fill. So my first experience with VRED is actually quite a funny one. I used to work for a company, and this is how I know Christian Braun, a company called Real-Time Technology in Munich, and they had a software called DeltaGen. So I was responsible as a technical pre-sales person for that software. And I was at a benchmark, which we put in a huge amount of effort to win. Actually, a former colleague of mine called Andy Brilke, who is working under Martin Emila, shows how small our community is. We all know each other somehow. And we put up a huge amount of effort to build this benchmark. And then a guy called Alexander Grasse from a company called PIVR came in and completely blew us out of the water with VRED. And I kind of came up with the decision. I had a crossroads in my career where I said, well, you can either beat them or you can join them, as we say in English. So I left RTT to go to Autodesk to use this software, VRED, because it was just, I heard so much stuff about it from our customers, and the fact that it had become the standard software within real-time and offline visualization with automotive design OEMs. So yeah, that's where my career started. Yeah, I'm here since 8 years. Very, very happy. Well, I'm not in home office 8 years, but at the company 8 years. So still very, very happy and delighted to be on the panel here for any questions that you might have. So hopefully that answers your question. It was a bit of a rambling answer.
Thank you a lot, Danny. Yeah, before we start with the discussion, I want to add something I forgot in the introduction. So please, everyone who is listening to us, feel free to ask questions either in the chat, or you also can raise your hand on the Zoom app and ask questions. We will, yeah, if you raise your hand, we will just, after the discussion, we will bring you in. And so you can ask it by yourself, or you can type it in the chat. This should be also possible for everyone, and so to have the questions if you have anything you want to know more, or any special things we forgot to discuss and you're interested in. Okay, so I want to ask Antonis the first question. So what was the most exciting experience with VRED so far?
Well, I think there were actually many funny experiences, because it's always the last step in the development process, and you're gonna try to show it in the best light and the best way you can. But I think one of the funniest moments was when we had to show a lineup of cars, and my boss kind of asked me, is it possible to have like a whole bunch of screens and show all the cars like animated and showing all the variations? And I said, yeah, sure, no problem, as usual. And then I had to figure it out, and it was super funny. It was a bit for me like a chess game, because I tried to find all the bits and pieces to get it working. So I had like two machines actually running, each of them 2 displays, and then I don't know, with those NVIDIA settings, made the screens kind of sharing on both monitors. And then I had like 4 cars at the same time driving into the picture, and then also transferring from all the pictures. I had 4 monitors showing to a big audience all those cars and variation, and worked out, and it was a bit like magic, because he was like moving his hands and the cars were doing whatever he wanted wanted, and I had that remote keyboard to make it all happen, and I really loved that moment. And I hoped that I'm gonna make it, but I was happy that it turned out well. So that was, I think, one of my funniest moments.
Do you have a question for anybody, Antonis?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's obvious, but like my workflow is heavily based on OpenGL. So from time to time, I was also ray tracing either still pictures or videos, or like frames for a video. But like my main workflow is working with OpenGL, like real time, showing either evaluating surface quality, model quality, or like, as I said, pitching designs, and then like adding funny animations and doing stuff that makes, you know, this typical joke to entertain the audience and be excited about what you show. And this is something I wonder, and it's maybe a question to Danny, but also I wonder how the others feel about it. Like, what is the future of OpenGL? Is like real-time ray tracing ready to take over? Is it like, for me, it's not yet there, but that's something I'm thinking about, which way to go, especially with car design.
Yeah, thanks, Antonis. I think just in reference to your last story, where you're trying to get together everything at the last moment, and this is something that myself and Christian Braun talked about a couple of weeks ago. Always change your running system. Always. That's the way you get innovation. You're constantly on the cusp of pressure that something is going to fail or break or become really successful. And I like that. I like that kind of anecdote. For me, OpenGL has a big future, and it's always depending on a few things. So what you want to do, OpenGL is available for all consumers because it runs on most devices, or at least good consumer grade graphics cards. If you want to do real ray tracing, so path tracing or photon tracing, which is physically correct, the amount of calculation that has to take place there is extremely demanding for any software or hardware setup. But I think we've reached this kind of watershed moment, this kind of breakthrough moment where with GPU ray tracing, you can get a small system like the system sitting behind me here in the home office. It's got 8 RTX 8000 graphics cards. And I can run a full exterior with 25 frames per second in HD resolution. Of course, when you go into the interior, it's a little bit different. It's a much more demanding thing to render an interior. And getting that into a virtual reality glasses, which I think is the point that you're trying to get, that has become the new holy grail. Not real-time ray tracing or global illumination, rather all of that physically correct with no fakes in a virtual reality glasses, running at 90 frames a second. So the demand is so big on the hardware. So I see a future for both. It's all, like I say, use case dependent, and also a little bit of hardware dependency too.
Yeah, I mean, if I can follow up, I think for me the struggle is also because you mentioned like fake, and faking is like major part of my job, to make things look like you want to have it look like. And for real-time presentations, I often work on shadows and kind of tweak everything manually still to make it even more look like desired. And that's sometimes for me also the struggle with real-time ray tracing, that you try to make it kind of realistic, but I want to still kind of fake it, and that's always the struggle. I don't know how the others feel about that.
Can I say something? I think it's very important to keep OpenGL because of timing. Sometimes you have to be really quick, so you have no time, just bring the data in, have a look, you get a decision, and later on you can do some really cool images or whatever. But I think OpenGL is very important also for the headsets. So if you are wearing headsets, I mean, you need this frame rate up to 90 hertz or so, so you can't do it really without a big machine in the background. So I think from my point of view, OpenGL is very important for design development, and also for the headset story to use it in a good frame rate.
So I can confirm, I mean, it's the really critical thing to get a good frame rates into the virtual reality applications. So it can be extremely important for design, for a fast decision making, for some kind of ergonomic research or whatever. And on the other side, I see a lot of potential for customer-focused applications where the customer, with the help of the headsets, can experience the product in a completely different way as today on a screen or on a smartphone display. So it is definitely a place where the OpenGL still will be very important, and my expectations are that the visual quality in OpenGL will be increased in next years with a more powerful graphic cards and new integrated functions. So we can expect some kind of adjustment of the visual quality you can achieve in a ray tracing and you can achieve in an OpenGL workflow.
Yeah. Christian, I want to ask you in the next question. You already said you have customers outside the automotive industry. Is VRED growing outside the automotive industry? What industry do you think is growing the most at the moment? Oh, you are muted.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sitting at the airport, so it's sometimes a bit loud. But I think it's a good question. So I think, yes, we can see a grow outside of the automotive industry, but the tool is still very expensive, you know. So for smaller offices and agencies, maybe not so easy to buy. But if you look on some areas, I mean, you will see something is going on. If you look on all the suppliers for the automotive industry also. But if you look, for example, in fashion industry or so, I mean, there's not much use. But I think maybe in the aerospace or so, there could be more. And in all the product development companies, if they have bigger projects to do, they can really use VRED in the design process. So it depends on, you need users, you need the money to buy it and to keep it. And it's a good tool, but you have to find the right situation for your company. So I think it will be a grow, but not enormously in the future. That's my opinion. Danny, maybe you see it different. I don't know.
No, I mean, we're all aware of the price point of VRED, but I think we're going to maybe touch on the subject of the democratization of the visualization, which opens up a whole world of accessibility to rich VRED content. So stuff like VRED Go, VRED streaming, these kind of things. I do have an example that it is still automotive, but it's quite a strange little example, but a very, very interesting and successful one. So it is Porsche, but it's Porsche factory. So Porsche has two factories, one in Leipzig and one in Zuffenhausen. And the Zuffenhausen one is developing the Porsche, well, formerly the Mission E, which has now become the Taycan. And they are using VRED on a daily basis to create imagery and do walkthroughs of the factories, because these factories are enormously complex. You're talking of hundreds of millions, if not billions of polygons. And VRED happens to be the only software where they can get the entire factory in without separating it up into different chunks. So if you imagine you're doing a walkthrough, a virtual walkthrough, and you load one part within a software, and you do a walkthrough, and then you come up to a border, and then you have to load another one. You wait 10 or 20 minutes and then walk through another part. And this was kind of an accident, I guess, that we had. So we're working together very closely with the guys, at least in Leipzig. And I think that's a cool illustration of one of the key strengths of VRED. It's not just the visual quality, because in factory design, they don't really care about physical correctness. They just want to see, you know, from a user perspective in one-to-one scale in virtual reality, you know, what this looks like. You know, you get into a little bit of ergonomics as well, visual ergonomics, and VRED consumes data like it's hungry for data. It's a monster. It can deal with a huge poly count without having to strip it out or optimize it, which costs huge amount of time and for the user also a lot of frustration.
Maybe if I can add a little bit, because I represent here a different industry as automotive, I really see the strength of the VRED in ability to consume a huge amount of data, and very powerful in terms of product visualization. So it's this ability to integrate the data to generate a complex switch structures. It's something what's really bring the benefits for each phase of the process, for the design up to the marketing. Where I see some challenges is, I would say it's a bit complexity of the software. You have to reach some specialist level to be productive with a tool. Doesn't matter if you are using simplified interface or the complex one. And this kind of ability is not available in each industry. So the automotive is here definitely a little bit forward, but I see the good tendencies in terms of how the VRED handled the workflows with the new integrated libraries and tutorials that are available currently on Autodesk channels to let this community of users grow, not only in automotive.
Okay. Martin, if you use that, what improvements would you like to have in VRED for doing your special needs?
It's a good question. Maybe to add one comment, BSH was the first corporate custom on a PBR. So I would say the VRED originally had started this footprint in non-automotive industry, but yeah, the quality of the software was simply so high, and automotive immediately recognize it. For us, what we like to have, we are a little bit different because our famous problem is you get a white fridge, so a white box in front of the white wall, and designer asks you to make it sexy. So our approach is a little bit different. Automotive is more emotional. We try to be more realistic. And for me, we are following mainly two streams. First is product visualization, so focus on a product or on the functions. There, I would like to have more interaction capabilities in OpenGL. For very fast and interactive presentation, for example, some kind of special effects, real-time shadows, self-reflection, ground reflections, whatever. And for visualization for a product in a context, it's another work stream we follow. I would like to reach more photographic level. Interior rendering in a VRED is on a high level, definitely. In terms of interior or room visualization, they're a little bit too clean look. So we want to work more on a natural looking renderings, and it's something where another tools are a little bit better, I would say. I don't want to name anything, but we have different benchmarks, and focus on a VRED is for us definitely in a product rendering.
So you would be talking about a gaming engine solution there, Martin, just to...
Not only a gaming engine competitive in a real-time presentation workflow. In ray tracing renderings, there are some other tools on the market. They get for us a better results. It doesn't mean that they are generally better, but for our use cases, there's a slight difference.
Yeah. No, I mean, from my perspective, I can't agree more that it takes a lot of effort to make something like an interior look believable. If you imagine, cars are always sexy. And I love the fact that you say to make a white consumer good look sexy on a white background is it's a challenge. So I say hats off to you for the job that you do. But a car has these curves. It's designed to be an emotional and engaging product, whether it be interior or exterior. When you have flat walls, like most walls in an interior of the house, they're just flat, they're planar. To get that looking realistic, and a lot of the time it's the imperfection of a wall or a surface that leads the human eye to believe that it is a real thing, a real object, rather than computer generated. I definitely agree with that. But I think from my perspective, that the capabilities with light maps as opposed to vertex-based shadow within VRED gives you the possibility to have a global illumination-based shadow calculation. And that is particularly helpful for these kind of flat planar surfaces, architecture in interiors and these kind of things. And I think there's a great video on YouTube. We were just talking about it before we got into the call from my colleague, who is the most technical person at Autodesk. So Christian, your introduction at the start is not entirely accurate. He has done his entire apartment in Fusion 360 and also textured it up using these light maps, including the nursery and all these cool little effects. So if you just go onto his channel on YouTube, it's a great way of building in that, as Antonis was saying, to sell the idea of having, you know, quirky, funny little features built in, and also the technical features of being able to bake these high quality light maps within VRED.
I agree.
If I can add stuff to the wish list to Santa, it's a bit like with a photo camera. Like I started with VRED and I thought, all right, it's quite complex, and I had to become an expert to understand it. But now, from time to time, I think like the materials often come to their limits. Like I would like to have sometimes more access to things and be able to connect it more. And I mean, you hinted it already. I also went into understanding Unreal and how I could use it for automotive process and what's happening there. And I have the feeling that you have to be even more an expert there, or at least maybe a different expert. But I like that the materials are also like the engine itself, like very node-based. And I love it with the material, which is also actually available in Maya, but it is in Unreal too. And that's something maybe I would ask to Christopher, who was silent now for a while. Like as I saw also from your tutorials for Christian, that you're very capable of programming, is like, what do you think about those node-based programming things? Is it something for VRED? Is it like just because I'm a beginner and I don't know better, or how do you see the topic of node-based stuff?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Unreal Editor.
Yeah,
and I guess I mean a blueprint system, of course, but also you have the material editor in Unreal, and you also have it in Blender and Unity, I guess. And there, a node editor really solves one particular problem, and I guess in the blueprint system solves the problem that C++, which is the programming language of the Unreal editor, is very complex. And so you have, you don't have this large gap between knowing what you want to program and really do it in C++. So we have the blueprint system in the middle, which takes out much of the complexity. And the same as I see it for the material editor, which solves the problem of having to writing shaders in a shader language, which is also a complex task. And I see the same thing with Grasshopper, for example. Grasshopper has these nodes where you have very complex mathematical functions where you can change your geometry and do stuff like that. But I do not really see it in VRED. So in VRED, you have Python as your scripting language. But I think Python is already one of the most beginner-friendly languages that there is. And also VRED has another approach to scripting than Unreal Engine, for example, or Unity. So I do not really see the benefit of translating the VRED Python API one-to-one in a node-based interface. So I don't think that the benefit would be large enough to really help somebody. So you could talk about a material editor, node-based in VRED. That would be also a great idea. And I also think you already have some kind of node-based programming in VRED. And that is, you have the variant sets. You can use switches, material switches, or geometry switches. And there you can incorporate small scripts that can also help you with getting across your real-time visualization. You can also build triggers into your scene where you can, for example, in VR, change material configurations or something like that. So I would say when you take Python API and translate it one-to-one in a node-based interface wouldn't be a great idea. But if you take small subsets of the VRED functionality and then translate it in a node-based interface, that would be nice. And I think that would also help newcomers for scripting.
So, Christopher, you as a developer, you could build your own third-party node editor. Do you think that that's a big deal to develop it by yourself? And
I don't know. I think there are solutions for Python. Also, there have been experiments for Python node-based scripting, and I guess you could do it for VRED. I think when you talk about VRED core, for example, where you only have the programming interface, you could think about a node-based editor for maybe data preparation or something like that, where you can put together your nodes, your input nodes, where to load your data from, how to convert your data, and then how to export your data. That would be not too difficult a task to do.
If I can just, sorry, Christopher, very quickly to kind of jump the gun on this. Yeah. This has actually been done for the Automotive Innovation Forum that we had, again, virtually, unfortunately not on site and in person. And it's basically, we're taking two softwares. We're taking Alias, which is the CAS modeling tool for a lot of concept design, automotive design. And we build up that model, and then we save some cameras and some lighting, and we use VRED core then to automate the data prep process. So it takes in the alias.wire file, it tessellates it, it converts it to a VPB, so a VRED file, or an OSB if you wanted. It applies the materials based on a material assignment or a lookup table. It creates a very basic ambient occlusion shadow, or it could be a light map shadow, I guess, if you wanted. And then it renders out, it applies an environment, it turns on global illumination and renders out the 5 cameras that were set in Alias. So at the end of the day, you get a lot of this automation. Now, you might say to yourself, okay, that's a CAS model. That's a very, very simple model where data prep is not as required. What happens if you take in, you know, a big assembly like a CAT product or something from Siemens NX or whatever it might be? That's a different story. But there are parts of the Python API or functionality within VRED that are exposed, or we're working on exposing, that will automate some of this stuff, like selecting and deleting B-sides or non-visible parts by decoring. You know, we're constantly getting more functionality within the Python API. So I think the future is yeah, I mean, with certain models, you can click one button and it will do everything in the background. But you still need to keep an eye on these things, because full automation requires a lot of cooperation between the modeler. It's a lot of process optimization, and it's whenever anybody says fully automized, I'm always a little bit wary. I'm like, hold on a second. There's no such thing really as full automation. But I think you're right with a lot of what you just said there.
From my experience, I can add one or 2 points. We are seeing Python as a very powerful tool for enhancing the VRED about some functionalities they are specifically for customers or industry. 2 examples: we use Python as some kind of scripting tool for changing, for example, a lot of materials in one step, a material optimizer. That's our name for this. Or we are using Python for enhancing VRED about the align function. Now, the align is an alias known to align the surfaces together, but maybe more as in Photoshop, to align on the left or the right side, align in the middle. So it's something you can easily implement it with a Python, and it make your daily life easier. So that's for me the biggest or the best options how to utilize the Python script into the VRED on a very fast base.
Mm-hmm. Christopher, you also do Python trainings, or also Python for VRED. What would you recommend to users without programming skills on how to get started with programming in VRED?
Yeah, I can mostly talk about scripting trainings. And yeah, scripting is a hard thing to do. So the most people that came to our training have been designers that wanted to learn some additional scripting. But scripting is a whole new tool set you can have. So I don't think it's really possible to learn a whole bunch of scripting in a short amount of time. But you can, well, as I said earlier, Python is a very beginner-friendly scripting language. And there are, for example, books and YouTube tutorials where you can really get the basics of Python and also the basic of scripting in general. And this really helps a lot if you just understand what are programming languages here to do. So how can they help you? As I said, they are just a tool you can use. And if you have some basics in scripting, that really helps you understanding how Python can help you getting things to work in VRED also. And it's also very important to know where to look for help. So you have in VRED, you have the forums where there are many helpful people, and especially you have the documentation where just many aspects of the Python programming language are described and defined, where I can look at things. And you also have examples. And yeah, it's just as important to know how to look for help and how you can, how can you know what you want to achieve, how you can achieve it.
I mean, I would add maybe that I like to have a look on the examples that are I think somewhere in the installation of VRED, because I'm a huge fan of copy paste and then altering and try to find out what works and how can I just like implement my stuff to make it happen. That's what I often did also with VRED, but also with Unreal, I really like that. And I think like if you don't know, have a look on the examples. There are many like Python things like there that you can try out and change.
Yeah, Danny just sent an YouTube link for Python tutorials on YouTube in the chat, so everybody can copy that out. Yeah, I think we also can send all the chats after the webinar to everybody who registered, so you can keep it. So Christian, so the field of real-time visualization, I think it's growing enormously. Do you already see difficulties in acquiring specialists in this area?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to find really good advanced people. So when I was in Sweden, it was really hard to get people to Sweden because it's not in the middle of Europe, and you have to get them over somehow, and it's very difficult to find them. So you go to universities, you look for young people, you develop them by yourself. It's possible, but it's really hard to find enough people if you have bigger projects. But I wanted to talk to before. We have been very technical now, and for me, VRED is a very great big tool with really big options, but that means always you need to have a specialist, and that's sometimes a problem for decision makers. It's so hard to see something sometimes, you know. You cannot by yourself open just a file because sometimes it's different made and you have different clicks, and you press F5, something happens, you don't know what happens. So Danny, maybe a question to you, if there's something a direction for VRED in the future to go more in the direction of presentations also, because I mean, everything we do, we have to show sometimes, and we did a lot of great stuff. You can do everything, you know, but it's sometimes really hard to do and not for everybody visible. And I saw it also in the design departments, you know, where I worked. It was like, yeah, everybody's working hard, but you don't see something. When you remember 20 years ago, we just sketched something, put it on the wall, everybody was walking around, saw the sketches. And now everything is inside the software, inside the computers, you don't see it. So presentation, I would say, is a big part of our life in the future. And also for VRED, it's so important to make really cool, nice, easy presentations available for decision makers also. So if there's something planned, I mean, just a different question just came in my head. Sorry, Christian.
Yeah, that's why we're here. Let's spitball it, as they say. That's no problem whatsoever. So I've got a couple of ideas on this, and it is it's something that our initiative is, and it's becoming a mantra of ours, is to provide free access, or freer access, let's say, to this type of rich content. So there are two sides to this. Firstly, it's the preparation, which somewhat, as I mentioned before, can be slightly automated. And the other augmenting that then is to have an expert who's really creating this interactive, emotional presentation. Then it's about the access to that. So how do you get access to that? Do you walk up to this VRED operator in the design studio and tap him on the shoulder and look over his shoulder and say, can you rotate this model? No, go back this bit here. And that's an extremely unproductive way of working. And you know, the design chief is conscious about annoying these people every minute of the day. It's the same as your CAS modelers, you know, and it would be better if these type of people could use it themselves at any stage of the day, on demand, on any device. And that's where this VRED core and the streaming stuff comes in, because I can just give, well, I can throw my iPad or mobile device at the design chief, and they click on a button, and it just, in the background, they don't need to know what's happening. They don't care what's happening. They don't need to know if it's VRED or Keyshot or Unreal or Unity, whatever it might be. All they see is on demand their design intent and the design iteration from the day before, or even from the morning of that day. And in the background, it launches VRED core, it loads the model, you get a user interface, and he or her can, you know, navigate around with a touch. They don't even need a keyboard and mouse. And this can be streamed within the design studio on a local network. It can be streamed through the cloud. It can be streamed from workstation to workstation. I think that's in times of, you know, uncertainty and the fact that we're all stuck at home together. That's the way to allow people access to their data, which they rightfully own. And I think that's definitely the future. It's just empowering the designer to be able to do a similar thing like walking into a studio and walking around a clay model. You know, it's that easy to do. Now, of course, we're not going to get into the argument of whether or not clay is here to stay. 100%. It is the best tool. It is the best medium for visualizing at least an automotive exterior and interior. What we're talking about is, you know, before you commit to the physical, that you do a lot more virtual, so you can cancel out any sort of problems before committing to the physical.
And if you come back to the question of Christian, how to find new talents, you know, and young people, I think it's very good if your software is really cool and you can do really cool presentations or even really cool technical stuff, you know. So if your software gets better and better, you will find much more talent on the market to come to you and work for you.
For sure, yeah.
I would like to hop on that topic because I didn't think about it, but it was actually a big part of me thinking about how to develop processes in a better way, because it totally agree. Like typical problem is that the bosses could walk to the clay models in whatever time, if it's late in the evening or early in the morning when there's no clay modeler there maybe yet, and they started taping, and you know, they could just do it with their hands. They didn't need like a special training for using their hands like they would need for VRED. They could just do it whatever they had. And that's something that I always figured out, that they, as you said, Danny, that they were a bit afraid to approach me because first of all, they had to disturb me. And the other thing is that they needed my help. So, you know, suddenly they rely on me doing what they want to do. And that's maybe something I would give back to Christian Braun is how do you see virtual reality there? Because I was hoping with those new tools that my idea would be maybe skip, one loop for before milling models to have a boss, for example, not taping on the first milling model, but rather putting on the goggles and maybe dragging a line. I don't know if that is dreams of the future or if it's already reality. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's a really great tool for design development. It's in between a 2D image and a 3D model. It's this VR goggles. It helps you a lot, and different companies have different ways of working. So at Polestar and Volvo, they have been really far away. They just really modeled everything in 3D and milled it and modeled it again. There was really less hand working on the clay models. And we used Googles a lot to have, before we milled it in, we used the Googles. But we also wanted to defining some lines or curves, but this doesn't work right now from my point of view. It's just the development. We have to be better there. It's really hard to define a curve in 3D with the Googles on. But if you look on the new Googles we have now with XR, with the see-through, with the cameras, and you can bring in the camera signal. You are in the studio, you see all the clay models, but you see all the virtual models standing there. So this is a really good development for the future. And I think the Googles will be more and more used, and the clay models will be more and more less used. But they are still there, and they're still used by somebody. So it's a development. It takes time. It takes years. It's also about the decision makers, how to be sure about the decision in a virtual environment. And they are very skeptical, the bosses, but it gets better and better, I would say, and the technique gets better and better. And we're living in the age of technology, and I mean, look at the wire headsets. I mean, they're so great from the resolution and so on. Yeah, it's the first time now you can also sit in the interior. And I was at the company last weeks, and they have been really upset with the VRED models because they didn't look really well. Then they took on the new Googles, and the resolution was so good that they, oh, what software is it? It was the same model, same software. It was just different resolution. Yeah, so sometimes you have to also be really careful. You have to think about everything, So, but VR and headsets, it's very important for the future.
I think there's a big chance how to improve on Accelerate design process to bring this both worlds together. So design and styling with a visualization and VR workflow. So it's not only for the decision makers on a higher level, but maybe for designers working on a specific concept, just to have a chance really without delay to evaluate some volume proportions or shapes without going into the VR studio. And then, I mean, the Autodesk already offered this capability with some kind of bridge between Alias and VRED, where the designer theoretically can utilize these functions on a work desk. You don't have to go into the VR room or whatever. My experience is on a decision maker level, there's still some kind of distance in terms of fear or not fully acceptance of VR capabilities. So the C-level guys are not ready to wear the headset and evaluate the model in a VR because they worked all life long with the different tools, with the power walls or tappings, whatever. So there's some kind of generation gap or need for a next generation where we can expect more acceptance and integration to daily process.
I mean, I get from being in design studios with this, there is a sea change with this. There are, the newer generation of people who are, I hate the word digital natives, but it's so patronizing to us old people. But sorry, Christopher, I don't include you in that. No, but it's they're used to this technology, and if those tools, those virtual tools, aren't available when they leave their studies, creative studies, and go to a design studio, they're just not going to accept these jobs. They're going to think that the studios are still working in the Stone Age, and that will be the push. But there are a couple of practical things that I get. If I am the CEO of a company or the chief decision maker. It's all based on my perception or how I'm perceived in front of all of my staff. Now, if I'm putting a mask on, I completely close myself off to my, to my peers and to my underlings. And there's a psychological thing. It's messing up my hair. What are they doing when I'm in this virtual world? Are they making fun of me behind my back? But this is why stuff like the XR3 is cool, because you can actually see your colleagues still while you're using it. This is why Cloud XR, where you've got a tablet you can hold in your hand and navigate around the scene, is important, because if you don't want to put that silly headset on, as some people perceive it, you can do it different ways. And you still have the flexibility to run a Powerwall. You still have the flexibility to view it on the Cave or a tablet. Now, of course, Powerwall and Cave, the usage of these is going down and down, because with a very cheap and simple setup, you can almost replace this, and the costs of maintaining these things are enormous, or have been in the past. So I think offering all of that flexibility to people who want to adopt it or who don't want to adopt it is the best thing. We can't force technology down people's throats. I'm a big fan of the sketch on a napkin. I'm a big fan of the sketching and taping on a big wall. It's all part of the process. But what we're talking about is for those who want to accept it, for those who believe in it, they can adopt it. That's no problem. But we're not going to be able to drag people kicking and screaming into this big, bold, brave new virtual world.
I think it's about sorry for it's about isolation. Yeah, the headset isolate you from a surrounding, and the right way is to bring it into the wider audience, because my experience is the design decisions, they go through the discussions. It's not a one-man show. You have to discuss about, and it's something what VR can support.
I think it's one very important point. We have to be quicker in the future. So still we have to, since I have my own company, I'm counting every euro very much, so time is very much money. And if the Googles or VRED helps us to be shorter in development time, get better and quicker decisions, that's the right way to do. So we should really push it and ease up the tools and give the tools to everybody and do it more and more. So this time thing is, I think it's very important. And there's VRED really good. You just have your VRED on screen, you just put it into Google, you can see it in 3D. That's great. That's really one advantage of VRED.
I wanted to add to the point, why with decision makers I had the same experience, and although I love VR goggles and whenever I try to watch the models I'm working on with VR goggles, I realized something in a different field, because as a hobby I'm flying quadcopters with the FPV goggles, and it's actually similar experience. Like if you're alone, which you shouldn't do, but you feel strangely disconnected and you don't know, are people watching you or not? Is the car coming, or how is the situation? And especially as you said, like decision making usually is together with other people. It's not like you're alone sitting somewhere in your office, but it is a broader audience, and suddenly you kind of disconnect from that audience, have those goggles and people are talking to you, but you don't know exactly where they are. That's why I'm really looking forward to those mixed reality goggles and looking how they behave, how they are accepted.
Christian talked about a very important point about the speed, and speed is for me not only how fast I develop my design, but it's about the iteration as well. So the tools should be should enable in the future to iterate very fast, not prepare the data again and again in the same way, but consume the data native from a styling tool, for example. And there are already some tools and functions in Alias and VRED workflow that make this possible. So this is the right way.
Okay. Oh, I just see that we already through the time, and thank you a lot for it was really a nice discussion. So for me, I didn't have to ask much questions, and a lot of interesting points and things I haven't heard before in that detail. So great, thank you all. So what I want, it would be good or nice to have some questions from all the people who are listening to our webinar. So there are no questions at the moment. So either you can raise your hand or type in the chat or the question and answers field. So is there anybody who has a question? So feel free, and you're very welcome.
There was actually a question from Andreas Fischer.
Yes, that's right.
It was less a question, but yeah.
Well, I wouldn't call it.
We already talked about it. So, so about further OpenGL features like screen space reflections, like game engines do. So I think Antonis already raised that question or the switch already. Yeah, I think would be nice to have, but we don't know when it's coming.
When or if, let's be very clear about this. I'm not a product manager here in the call, so it'd be dangerous for me to make any sort of commitments to anything. So I think it's something that's definitely on our radar. It's very interesting. When we talk about screen space reflections, we're moving away from the physical correctness of path tracing. So brute force ray tracing, which is very, very, as I mentioned before, calculation intensive. I mean, if you've got a single workstation, imagine 10 years ago, you were rendering a single 4K image of an interior. It was taking you 5 to 6 hours in certain softwares. And now we expect that to run in a similar quality at 90 frames per second in a smaller resolution. So it's astounding the way the technology has come along. When we're talking about the OpenGL screen space reflections, it's a question of what you're trying to achieve as well. Are you trying to achieve just a pure design communication or an emotional story to sell your design? Or are you trying to simulate visually what this product will look like if you put it through the physical process? So it's two completely different things, but it's, as I said before, it's definitely something that's on our radar, and it's a lot of customers are asking for it. So I can't answer it straight away, but yeah, it sounds like I'm just fobbing you off with some propaganda crap here, but no, I think you get the point.
Okay, so there are no further questions.
There is a question, but it's very
okay.
In future, do you see the combination of art and AI in rendering machines like VRED?
That's an awesome question.
You guys know Viscom, right? Those AI-based image processing things there.
Yeah, they already have something there.
I mean, this is probably not answering the question, but I'm also here to promote VRED in a way. It is kind of my job. And I wouldn't forgive myself if I hadn't mentioned DLSS, so deep learning super sampling. This is not answering your question, but it is, if you imagine VRED as the authoring tool where you are creating a type of art, design is an art form, of course. It's mass produced and it's productized, but it's still art, it's styling. To increase the performance of something like that, we've brought in DLSS from NVIDIA, which is basically sampling up a lower resolution image using artificial intelligence so that you get higher resolution without the demands of that type of image, which would mean that either a slower computer or a more complex scene will run on a smaller hardware installation. So you are using artificial intelligence to do that. It's the same for the denoising function for ray tracing within VRED. That firefly effect, that artifact effect that you would get sparkling effect from a sampling image is almost immediately gone using the artificial intelligence of the tensor cores on the NVIDIA graphics cards, at least. So this denoising is a huge help to visualization. So two different types of artificial intelligence are already built into VRED. So although it didn't answer your question, I was able to promote my company and the product.
But I have to add this denoising again. Like I felt old in the beginning. I tried it, and I had a car with spoke with very fine spokes. And of course, like the AI in the first loop totally washed them out. There was nothing there. And I was like, okay, this is crap. I can't work with that. I want the noise back. But the fact is you really have to wait a bit, and then you astonished how fast actually you get a clear image with good details. But in the first two iterations, it looks sometimes surprising. Let's put it that way.
I describe it best as if you were to look at something in real life by rubbing Vaseline in your eyes. Yeah, it's just all smeared. But there are, yeah.
But Danny, I mean, AI would be so great. I mean, if you just believe or think about you starting rendering, okay, and you did a lot of renderings before, and suddenly the system, the AI system tells you, oh, maybe you use this or this direction, or you use this shadow, and helping you to develop, maybe also gets information from the market, which setting is right now the most current, you know, how is it, and makes you options and brings you some ideas. And so it helps you, supports you to make the right steps, you know, and maybe don't forget something you learned 5 years ago. So AI in the future, I think it's very, very could be really helpful also for VRED to make a more efficiency and more quicker, better stuff. Just an idea.
Yeah. Cool point.
Alessandro brought up a topic. I just read it. Just an ethical question. VRED is actually stuck in a perfectly comprehensible dilemma on ray tracing. On one side, we have automotive industry that needs exact simulation. And so far, example, brute force GI, slow and noisy. And on the other side, we have general product design that needs fake and more optimized algorithms. Just asking for a general thought.
It's extremely well phrased and very eloquent from Alessandro. This is what we've been talking about. What is the goal of the visualization person? Is it, you know, representing reality and gaining trust in the digital decision-making process before committing to the physical? Or is it to communicate an emotional or to tell a story about a product, be it fast-moving consumer goods or automotive or whatever it might be? So they are offered by either VRED or other tools, you know. I mean, I think it's very important to say that we're not here to, at least from my opinion, we're not here to march into the design studios and you know, with great fanfare, say that you don't need any other visualization tools. We're very, very conscious of the fact that we share the ecosystems with gaming engines. It's up to the customer and the designer to reach the decision at what stage they want to go fully physical or physically correct. I think that's a fair game. You know, we're sharing this space with other tools that do certain things better than we do, and we do certain things better than they do. I think that offering the choice to our customers is absolutely paramount for this.
Yeah, and what I also would add is that you might also know that there's a direct exchange from VRED data for Unity, for example, to Unity, or Unreal, to example, and for Unity, it's VRED is the best and fastest way to prepare data sets for your pipeline to Unity, and to get good reliable shaders to your scene for Unity. So you also can suggest that. So it's open. We have another questions from a question from Lokesh. A lot of mechanical engineers tend to use VRED for use case like ergonomic feasibility. Oh, very interesting. Perceived quality, etc. Being experts in the field, what would you suggest for such people to get a grasp on the CG world, to get a specialist level knowledge with VRED? So who want to answer that?
I mean, I can field it. I can field it if you want, but it's a longer question. Firstly, I think it's great to have good partners. So I think Product Innovation Lounge and you know, that kind of expertise is absolutely imperative. The tutorials that we offer now on YouTube, on the VRED-Pro-Channel, I have to admit, in the past, we've been a little bit lacking in our online presence, but I think Antonis mentioned the online community, Christopher mentioned the forums. This is absolutely key to establishing a good expertise in VRED. And last but not least, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Keep practicing. If you do a training course for 3 days and then you don't come back to VRED for a month, it's your own fault. You're gonna forget it quite quickly. So just keep using it and experiment, I would guess.
And we offer trainings to our customers. So we have Christian Wölfel who wasn't able to attend today. He is really a really good trainer, and I think he is one who, with the deepest knowledge in any detail of VRED. So if you really want to get to a professional level, just use on-site trainings or our training courses. That's a good way to achieve it very quickly. Okay, I think that have been all the questions so far. So we're already 10 minutes over the time. So I would like to finish this discussion, and thank you all for attending. Thank you all to have this really good and yeah. I think really friendly and open discussion was great fun for me, and great fun for listening, great fun to have you here, and also thank you a lot for attending on Zoom and also YouTube. We also streamed it to YouTube. So looking forward for the next VRED experts or whatever experts panel discussion with Product Innovation Lounge. So thank you, and bye-bye.